I love your green couch to my orange
I
couch.
know it's honestly this is meant to be, I think. I mean, just the
It
fact that you
is.
want I mean, I didn't even have a say in this orange couch. You didn't have a say in this green couch, and look how they look together.
I know. I just need to get some art, so
Yeah,
that'll come soon.
these three things took me probably a year to even
Yeah.
like land on.
Speaking of landing things, I wanted to talk about landing brand deals today.
Ooh, I'm excited. I think brand deals are just talked about so much in the content creator community, so I'm excited to contribute, our POV.
Yeah, for sure. I One of the things that prompted some of these ideas for today's episode, I ran across a couple of different articles. Well, one article, I think it was from Forbes of the top creators, and it
Hmm.
was sharing like all the top influencers and how much they made. And I mean, it was like $23 million, Charlie D'Amelio, like, huge, huge
Yeah.
numbers. And then it was funny because I got on LinkedIn and I was just scrolling as you do. And
Hmm.
the influencer marketing manager of Wix, we are connected.
Oh,
And I've never worked with them, but
yeah.
she's a really cool follow if you're into like influencer marketing stuff. She posts a lot of the behind the scenes from the brand side.
Hmm.
She posted this little chart of her own personal data from running influencer campaigns for Wix. It was really interesting. I don't know if you want to like, I know you're looking at it. If you
Yeah, I
want to
know.
share any like reactions or highlights from it.
I checked it out. I think this is going to be a testament to how I feel about a lot of people going after brand deals is
Mhm.
that they're lower than I thought.
Mhm.
I think one of the big issues that we can even get into more is that when it comes to brand deals, and maybe because I have that background of digital marketing experience, I know my worth to a brand.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'll talk to other content creators and they'll say they signed a contract where they allowed certain things to happen. I'm like, that's a huge deal. Like what you
Mhm.
just allowed for, even like paid usage rights, as an example, is crazy because when it comes to a campaign, if you allow paid usage rights for even a month, they could put $100,000 behind it. And let's say, according to this chart, for someone who has 100 to 500K followership, for a TikTok video, you only charge $1,000
Mhm.
and they put 100,000 behind it. Where's
Yeah.
the happy medium there in terms of I'm going to make content, but you obviously have the funds to get it out there to a lot of people.
Yeah, 100%. And I think we're going to dive deeper into that when we talk about how to price brand deals because that is
I
such
know
an
too.
important piece of this, I think.
Yeah.
But I totally agree with you. One of the things that was shocking to me about this, and for those who are just listening, like a quick little rundown, it looks like YouTube was the highest on average
Yeah.
payouts, which for me is true. I'm curious your thoughts on that because I'm not really huge on TikTok or Instagram,
Hmm.
but I have always been able to command the highest rates on YouTube, followed by LinkedIn
Yeah.
randomly. LinkedIn sponsorships, I feel like, are a lot more far and few between. So, whatever. And then TikTok and Instagram were kind of somewhere,
Hmm.
down there. I found it interesting too. Obviously, the huge creators, the 500K to 1 million, were charging the most. However, it looks like up to 20K and 50K to 100K were kind of like neck and neck with each other too. So it was really
Yeah.
that micro influ or like mid influencer, I don't know really what the term is, but like 20 to 50K where I feel like they're really shortchanging themselves, which
Yeah.
was interesting.
I feel like too, YouTube, going back to your question about why I feel YouTube brand deals tend to be more money, I
Hmm.
feel like it's because YouTube was kind of the originator of like building and developing a niche audience.
Yeah.
So, I mean, even look at your example of being someone who's super successful on YouTube for being, a certain niche and
Hmm.
delving in a certain world. Whereas people on TikTok, even, when it was up and coming, were dancing and they
Yeah.
were getting really famous for anything to
Yep.
where like niche communities weren't a thing. And that's why I made it a goal for myself to develop one because
Yeah.
I know the power of that. And I think that's just where YouTube still really thrives.
Hmm.
Would you
Yeah.
agree?
Yeah, I totally agree. And I also think it's just the long form content
Yeah,
appeal of, I know
that too.
it's hard. Like I don't scroll TikTok a lot, but when I
Mhm.
do and I see an ad, it's pretty much just like swipe. Like as soon as I realize it's an ad, I'm like, I'm over it.
Yeah.
Whereas YouTube, they tend to be integrations or just like a quick 30-second ad read. And I'm like, cool, that's the price I'll pay for this 40-minute YouTube
Right.
podcast interview. So I think it just integrates a little better sometimes. And or if it's like a dedicated YouTube video, well, then they're like, oh my gosh, we're paying, $4,000 for a 10-minute video dedicated
Right.
to our product. Like, what a steal. So,
That's a good point too.
yeah.
At face value, it did your exact point that you just said about, a 10-minute video being what they get. But I would be curious because especially if like something really gets going on Reels or on TikTok, I would
Yeah.
be curious to see like the cost per hour watched. And that's me
Interesting.
going back to my analytics days.
Yeah.
I'd be curious of how much brands are really paying because I would say compared to some YouTube videos, my TikTok videos or Instagram reels, like one of my reels organically got
Mhm.
120,000 views. I
Wow.
would say that is a big competitor to, and it was very niche. It was about Metro Detroit
Yeah.
and that's my audience.
Yep.
So I feel like I would be curious to look at how many hours people watch, even though it's shorter, compared to like a similar YouTube
Absolutely.
structure. Yeah.
There are so many numbers that go into the,
It's so. This is why I'm happy we're talking about it because it can get so complex, and if
yes.
you don't delve into that world of the complexity of it all, you
Yes.
just don't know. And so
Yep.
it's good to always talk about it.
Totally. Totally. But let's get into how we even get to these rates or
Sure.
beyond them, as Ryan suggests, and I kind of suggest too.
Yeah.
Let's talk about our experience with brand deals.
Yeah, I can kind of start off. I feel like initially, my first brand deals I found via signing up for, I think they still have them. They're kind of like content creator platforms where people can like apply themselves for
Hmm.
maybe like a $400 brand deal with a random sports drink
Yep.
brand that is looking for it. And I, from the, business side of things, I felt like that's genius to have the opportunity to reach all these smaller influencers and get them to create even a maybe like lower quality video, but you're getting a good price on it. And that's where I
Yeah.
started. That's where I think I got the Crocs deal and where I got something. It was a smaller, I think it was like a sports drink related thing.
Nice.
Um, and that's how I got my first initial ones. And that's when I just was on Instagram. I had like 2,500 followers. This was bringing it back to, 7, 8 years ago.
Okay.
And then I didn't start getting brand deals again until I developed what I currently have. And I would say that in a lot of cases, the brands reached out to me. Do you feel like brands reach out to you more than you've done any reaching out to others?
Yes. Similar similar thing for me. Well, actually, I would say that I started out my first brand deals, you could say, were
Yeah.
more in-kind collaborations, were
Hmm.
gifting campaigns. And for those who aren't familiar with that, it's when a brand reaches out and they're like, let's say it is Crocs or that sports drink brand. They're like, hey, Ryan, can we send you like a bunch of like, a lifetime
Yeah.
supply of sports drink and, show it in your videos if you want to, or you don't have to. And so
Hmm.
I got a lot of those when I was in my beauty guru era. I got a lot of like makeup stuff. I remember I got a gluten-free box. You remember when
Yeah.
subscription boxes were like everything?
Yes, they
I
when they started, people went crazy. They were like, "I can get a
yes.
box of
Yes.
these things I love for $30."
Yes, it's like Christmas. You open it up and you don't know what's inside. So yeah, had like a random gluten-free subscription box.
Hmm.
Do that. But my first paid deal was also inbound, and it was small. It was maybe a few $100s on
Hmm.
YouTube. I honestly can't even remember what it was. I think it was like some type of a boutique, like a clothing boutique, and they said, "Hey, we'll give you like we'll pay you like $200 and give you a
Yeah.
$100 gift card, that kind of thing." After that, I also used platforms like you mentioned. Like I remember one was called Popular Pays.
Ooh, yes, I think like I heard of that one.
Yeah, there's some other ones too, but I used those for a while. I also, full disclaimer, I used to work for one of my first freelance clients was one of those platforms called Octoly.
Yeah,
So I
I
got a
remember
lot
the
of,
Octoly era for you.
yeah, it was so fun. I miss those days sometimes. But yeah, so I did a lot of that stuff. And then once I really started building up, a sizable, decent, actually, I don't want to even use the term sizable because we'll probably
Mhm.
talk about that more. A more highly engaged community is
That's a good way to put
when
it.
the brand deals really started coming inbound for me
Yeah,
that were a higher ticket.
and I even like, because my mom has low key been like a business manager for me, or like a business consultant, we'll say, of
Yeah.
things I can just talk to her. And I remember I've had a lot of conversations with her through my entrepreneurial journey and my content creator journey. And I remember telling her, these deals, like they reach out to me. So as long as I keep making content and keep doing my thing and just focusing on what I know best and getting maybe 3 or 4 posts a week out, I know that they'll continue to reach out because one did.
Yeah.
One clearly found me. I mean, we were talking about, literal things that you can do, making sure that you have a link on your Instagram, for example, that
Yeah.
sends them to either a contact form of some kind, maybe a website you have, and just ensuring that you give your content pages that business savvy twist, that addition that people in the business world might be more attracted to. And because they can message you on Instagram. Oh, that was actually one thing I really wanted to ask. Do you get more emails or do you get more messages via Instagram telling you to email them?
99% email. What
Oh,
about you?
see, there you go. Yeah, I was gonna say mine are mostly email as
Yeah.
well. I've
Yep.
only the ones that reach out via Instagram, I'm a little bit like skeptical that they're not as serious.
Yeah.
And they come through still like pretty frequently, I would say, but they
Yeah.
end up being more local people, not so much the big brands that I think have those influencer agencies that know like these
The biz.
influencers mean business.
Yeah.
And I'm going to send them like it can be kind of intimidating because the first email you typically receive for any kind of brand deal, they really lay it out, at least in my experience, they lay out every part that they typically want.
Yeah.
It's a lot to come at
Yeah.
you, at 3 p.m. on a Friday or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and totally. And I think that's one of the reasons I know, it's like nowadays the barrier to entry for content creation is it's very democratized. Like anybody can create content and I love
Hmm.
that. But I want all the content creators out there listening to know that it really pays off to just take a few minutes to like set up a professional email inbox for yourself. It doesn't even have to be necessarily a domain like hey at latoshajames.com. It can just be latashajames at gmail.com or whatever that might be, not
Hmm.
pink bunny 59,
Yeah.
like your college little
Your
dorky
AIM
email.
account username.
Yes. Yes, like something that looks professional, put your profile picture in
Yeah.
the, Gmail thing because yeah, that is how most brands do communicate and having like proper email etiquette as well, responding to those emails quickly. I mean, I feel like there's been so many brand deals that came in that honestly the reason I got it is because I responded the fastest.
Hmm.
I where they would say, "Hey, this we have a deadline of EOD end of day tomorrow to fill
Yeah,
this campaign." And I'm like, "Yep, I'll do it."
I'm on it.
So, yeah, so all of that stuff, that professionalism does really matter even though content creation is so fun and laid back,
Yeah.
you know, there's money on the table, man.
Right, and they're trying to get a job done. That's the thing my mom actually reiterated to me after doing one. I said, "This was really crazy. Like this whole thing, it happened so quick." And she said, they were looking for someone to complete a job they needed to complete. You got to think about the person when you're making a website for yourself, when you're emailing, you got to think about the person on the other side, not yourself. And
Yeah.
so you know that they need to complete some type of job. You're the avenue to doing it. They want to pay you for it, kind of treat it as such, and help them the best you can. And
Yeah.
I mean, when you're talking about professionalism, that doesn't mean you also have to like lose yourself in the business world. That's been something I personally have wanted to always actively keep
Yeah.
is like I still use emojis on emails.
Yep.
I don't I never stopped using emojis on emails when it came to content creation because it's fun for me. I want to give that
Yes.
fun to them because I know they're trying to complete a job and for them it's their, full-time salary job typically.
That just unlocked a memory for me of so one of my cooler first brand collabs, it was actually with a web series
Hmm.
and the director and creator of the web series, her email said to me, hey, Latasha, like, I've been watching your YouTube channel for a while. I love your hand tattoo. I have a hand
Yeah.
tattoo, which hand tattoos are looked at to be very unprofessional, well,
Hmm.
in the traditional corporate world. And I'm always a little insecure about that of like, oh, are people judging me for, having
Yeah.
this hand tattoo? And it's like that was such an aligned brand because
Yeah.
clearly that's what she was looking for. The web series was about like goth kids in
Hmm.
Washington, D.C. So like perfect. Like they want somebody with a hand tattoo who used to be a former goth,
Yeah, I was gonna say, I was like, you were a former goth, right?
Yes. Exactly. So yeah, I
um,
agree. You don't have to lose your personality by being professional.
exactly. And that's, yeah, I feel like that's like a good testament to anybody out there looking to get more professional with their content creation. Don't feel like you have to lose yourself one bit because, to Latasha's point, to the point that I would say when it comes to creating a niche audience, is the right brands are going to come to you. They're going to love you and they're going to really want to work with you. Similar to like job hunting, I would say,
Yeah.
is whenever I went into interviews and I really was really connecting with the person interviewing me, I said, I actually think I want this job versus the other
Hmm.
ones. You don't have to like fight. If they were like giving you a lot of questions and kind of feeling like they were giving you a hard time, leave them behind because
Yep.
down the road, and I think we have seen this with our brand deals, the people that don't already know you, they don't already understand what kind of content you make,
Yeah.
they are not the best to work with, and
Ooh.
and you will maybe regret it. But for the most part, a lot of people reach out and they do get. I mean, you share so much of yourself online, as do I. I would
Hmm.
hope they understand a little bit about me, going
Hmm.
into it.
Yeah, totally. Another thing I just want to add
Mhm.
on things creators can do to make themselves more pitchable, if you will, is if you're open to events, if you're open to local stuff, put your location in your bio
That's a good idea too.
safely, okay? Not like your street address,
Yeah,
but major metro city, whatever. I know you do a lot more local stuff than I do. I
yeah.
really don't that much, so I don't have it. But I know when I was sourcing creators for Octoly or for other brands that I've worked with, that was a big thing. We'd be having an event in New York City. So I would be scouring for what, creators are
Mhm.
in the tri state area and so on. So that can be really helpful too.
Would you look at hashtags like New York City creator, or would you
Hmm.
look at more like Instagram location tag when you were looking for people?
So honestly, I was looking for my work at Octoly. We had creators on the platform already who had signed up to
Oh,
get
okay.
brand deals through us, and so I would look through our roster. I'm sure we probably had an internal database. I really can't remember. It's been a while, but just when I was like hand sourcing people, I would just look at their Instagrams and one try to figure it out. If it's a big city like New York, it's pretty easy to figure out, by
Hmm.
their pictures, but also just looking in their bio. So put like, a lot of people do the little pin emoji
Hmm.
and then Miami,
Right.
Tampa, Detroit, whatever. And it can be really helpful because those events can be a great way to get brand deals as well. I know, again, in my beauty days, I got a lot of brand deals from going to events like Generation Beauty, even just
Hmm.
like networking events, brand events, stuff like that. So it can be a good idea to keep it in there so you can get invites and things like that.
So, in essence, to recap, the things that people can essentially do to have the brand deals almost like come in once you're making content, I would say it's have a link, maybe on your Instagram bio, to a website or a contact way of contacting you and really like spell it out. I think even on my TikTok, when I was just building it up, I said, DM me for collabs.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's also putting your location because, like you said, people might be looking for event specific things, major cities, like the closest bigger city that you are to. I think that
Yep.
would be the best way to essentially decide what city to put. And then I would say, too, just making sure you check your emails
Mm-hmm. And respond to them
and respond
in a timely
very
manner.
quick in a very timely manner. That's the
Yes.
also important part.
Yeah. I want to touch on really quick your thoughts on this too. I know I mentioned it, large following versus engaged following. You mentioned how many followers did you have when you started getting like paid brand deals?
Ooh, I would say my first one probably came around when I had around like 80K on TikTok. And I want to note
Hmm.
that with TikTok being the newer kid on the
Hmm.
block, that I think that's the reason why it took so long.
Mm,
I
hmm.
think because people were a little bit hesitant to be doing TikTok and brand deals. Even now, I would say people like to be promoted on my Instagram versus my TikTok.
Yeah.
They like
Right.
both, but
Yeah.
most of them pick Instagram as like the
Okay.
the main.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah. And I would say for me on YouTube, it was memory's a little fuzzy, but it was definitely like under 10,000
Oh yeah.
on YouTube. So these were huge, huge things. I would say my when I really started to say like I could make a living from
Mhm.
brand deals was probably 80 to 100,000 also on YouTube.
I would say then it's pretty similar
Hmm.
because I was going to note too that I kind of ignored being in the digital marketing space. I kind of ignored the small guys a little
Hmm.
bit, if not for me doing something just out of, the goodness of my heart or just
Yeah.
wanting to promote a certain brand that I liked. I really kind of waited until I got the one that was like a multi-thousand-dollar,
Yeah.
deal. So similarly, I think that's the point where I said, "Oh, I can definitely make a living off of this." I mean,
Yeah.
if I did two of those a month, that's a good salary for the year, you
Yeah.
know?
Right.
And so it seems like that 70 to 80K marker is where they start reaching out to you a lot.
Yeah.
Before that, if you're lower than that, you can definitely sign up for these other programs where you're actively having to apply.
Hmm.
But where the work comes to you, you
Yep.
got to wait maybe until later on, is the idea I'm getting.
Yeah. And the reason I ask that is just because I don't want to discourage smaller creators or new
Mm-mm.
creators because as we both always talk about, like having those multiple revenue streams really to me is how you become a successful full-time content creator.
Yeah.
I personally don't ever want to rely on just one source of income because it can be
Mm-mm.
gone tomorrow.
Right.
So having that diversified revenue, even if you're a small creator and you get one 5,000 brand deal for the year, well, that's $5,000. Like,
That
that's
you didn't have before that.
exactly. That's your computer, that's your camera,
Right.
that's so many things that you can reinvest back into your creator business. So I think it's important to know. I did like a coaching package with this woman who restarted her YouTube. She had nothing on it. And she started creating videos about Etsy. And by the first video, she got a sponsorship offer. Now, I don't want to like say that's likely to happen for
Yeah.
everybody, but it is absolutely possible. So don't think you have to have
Right.
$100,000 to get a sponsorship.
If you are niche enough, especially, like let's say you are really about small businesses in Baltimore, if
Mhm.
you develop a page and you only make content visiting small businesses in Baltimore, talking with maybe owners of shops in Baltimore, the products you're getting, Baltimore, the city itself, you get 3,000 followers. I guarantee you, you
Mhm.
could reach out on Instagram to any business in Baltimore and say, hey, would you, for $300, be okay if I came in and did a reel about your business? I guarantee you, you could make good amount of cash just doing that and pitching yourself as so.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's a really good strategy to kind of adopt and think about if you're a smaller creator.
The riches are in the niches, baby.
The riches, we need to get t-shirts.
Yes.
The riches are in the niches.
Yeah. So, can we talk about rates really quickly? I mean,
Yes.
I feel like this is a whole episode, to be honest. So, everyone listening, let us know. What are your questions about rates? Do you want deeper dive? But, like,
Mhm.
when that first brand reached out, how did you know what number to give them? Or did they give you a number?
It was intimidating. Some of them, I will say, initially gave me a number. And that
Hmm.
was really nice because you didn't have to think
Love
about
that.
it. You said, am I okay with this or am I not? And sometimes I think they even added, we cannot go higher than this.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, well, this is what it is. And yes, okay, I'm willing to do it for that. Other times when they ask you, what do you charge? I would say the only way I was able to increase that was seeing what I could get from other brands. So kind of
Mm,
having to go through the process just multiple times in order to really land on a dedicated rate.
yeah.
And I think part of that includes a little bit
Hmm.
dreaming about the rate that you would want to have, what you think you deserve, really knowing your worth. Again, a paid usage right where they can use your video in an ad versus organic usage, very, very different. If
Yep.
it was organic, I would not charge nearly as much as if they're asking for paid usage rights. Sometimes for 3 months, sometimes for half a year. So
Hmm.
I feel like when in terms of aligning on rates, again, looking at industry insights like we talked about initially, I think is really good as a base.
Hmm.
And then going off of that with, are you super niche? And is this a niche product? Do you get really good engagement compared to other people in the space or just to other influencers in general?
Hmm.
These are things to kind of help build up, I think, your confidence if you're a creator looking to find out what rate to go after for a brand deal. What about you? Like, what do you think is what is
Well,
included?
yeah, I agree with all of that. When I first started, there was this website, I think it still exists, but it's called Social Blue Book.
Oh, I've never heard
And
of it.
yeah, you can connect I know your YouTube channels. I'm sure they do all the social platforms now, but back then it was connect your YouTube channel and it would like analyze all the things that you mentioned, your followers, your engagement
Hmm.
rate, and it would give you benchmarks, industry benchmarks for the
Oh,
cost of like a shout out, a dedicated video, that kind of thing.
yeah.
Now, the numbers were low in my opinion, but it was like a baseline. So I was like, okay, so I cannot charge any lower than $1,000 for
Right.
a integration or whatever. So it was a starting point for me. And then I agree. I think just, for me, like I can never, I don't want to say can never, but I could never historically play the volume game because I don't have the most followers ever. Like I don't the audience that I reach, which is primarily online business owners, creators, it, there's a limit to that,
Hmm.
to how much of that audience I can reach. Like it's not like I am selling Coca-Cola. Like I'm a lifestyle brand and
Yeah.
Coca-Cola can be applicable to literally everybody in the
Everyone.
world, right? There's a cap. So I can't play, oh, I have 1 million followers. Likely, I mean, who knows, but likely that might not ever be the case for me because my niche is so narrow. So
Hmm.
instead, it's playing into expertise. It's okay, well, if you search social media manager on YouTube, I come up. I speak on these stages, these well-known industry leading conferences. And it's really been kind of positioning myself as an authority,
Yeah.
not just as another like box to check. Like, oh, this influencer is going to get us a bunch of impressions. It's almost playing
Hmm.
the like you're getting her stamp of approval. You're getting an industry expert's stamp of approval. And with that, you mentioned like usage rates and stuff. Another thing that you definitely want to look into is exclusivity. Um, because, and again, especially if you're an industry expert, for me, for example, one of my longest running partners is Metricool. They're a social media scheduling tool. They're the only social media scheduling tool I promote because that would be kind of unethical and
Right.
weird if I was like, oh, but also check out this one and this one. So therefore, they are willing to pay me a little bit of a higher rate than maybe my engagement rate suggests because they're getting me to dedicate myself to their tool and therefore I'm shutting down other potential brands because they reach out. All the other
Yeah.
social media scheduling tools reach out and I decline them because I have that loyalty to the brand.
Yeah. And I think one, I mean, that's how it works in the fashion world. Even too,
Mhm.
you hear about these celebrities dedicating to Dior or
Mhm.
Valentino or what have you. Like that is what they have to wear to every event, at least maybe
Mhm.
a couple times in the year. That is the same thing, just applied in a different way.
Yep.
And yeah, exclusivity I think is really important, especially if you are in a niche.
Mhm.
I tend to get brand deals that are in different industries, which is really nice. So I don't need to worry about exclusivity as much.
Yep.
But what I do find is like when I do a deal for one type of industry, then usually like the next year, a different company in that same industry will reach out
Yep.
because they saw it. So it's good for, inbound sales even too,
Yeah.
to uh, get it that way. But
It could be a bargaining chip, you
right, it could be
know?
a huge bargaining chip. I mean, I actually have had one instance where I had to say no to something because of an exclusivity. Um, Arrangement. So know
Mhm.
that they will happen. And especially if you start getting reached out to pretty often, make sure to keep one thing I do is just keep a little tally of, you know, the industry, what dates that exclusivity is, because you might forget and then someone reaches out and you can't do it,
Yep.
or what have you. So keeping on top of that, because these are big businesses. It can be intimidating, but make sure you read your contracts and things like that. And
Yes, yes.
yeah, I think that all delves into the cost of things. One thing I wanted to kind of almost like finish up with on my end was that when it came to being an authority in the industry that you're in or creating content for, I have to say that especially now, doing this for 4 years about the same niche, my face has been on Michigan related videos, you know,
Yep.
tens of millions of views for the past 4 years. I would say I do charge a little bit more now because I know that I'm a recognizable person. I get stopped in public.
Yep.
And I know that if they ran an ad,
Yep.
people know who I am. People see me out and about. I need to really make sure I'm pricing myself well for what it's worth, which I think is pretty good.
Hmm.
And having that confidence, and as the time goes on, I think just doing more will essentially build up your confidence and build up your rates too.
Yeah, totally agree. Yeah, and I charge less. You know, if it's I don't know, Glacier wants to
Right.
sponsor me, this lip balm, which I love, sponsor me. No, I'm just kidding. I would probably give them a cheaper rate because I know that, you know,
Hmm.
I don't have a hold, if you will, on that niche audience like I do for a social media scheduling tool or a microphone brand or
Hmm.
something like
I've
that.
done that too. I will say I'm being someone who's been the digital marketing, just business side. I'm very real with people. Well, we talked about a lot of good content stuff. I feel like we didn't nearly get through even some of the topics we wanted to talk about.
We didn't, but I want to spill a little tea before we go,
Ooh, yes.
if that's okay. This is water,
I'm
but we'll
down.
pretend
This
it's
is what
tea.
the confessions part of this podcast.
Yes, let's do it ASMR style, shall we? No,
Confession.
I'm just kidding. Let's not. No, I mean we can. Comment down below if you
Content
want.
creator confession.
So I'm gonna do a little rapid fire, and we can
Yeah.
both answer these. And goes without saying, you don't have to share names. It's probably best that we don't,
Yeah.
especially for anything spicy. But let's
Right.
start with the soft and fuzzy, which is, do you have a favorite brand collab that comes to mind?
Yes. I feel like one of them was particularly, I do Michigan content, and one of them was a very well known Michigan brand. And they wanted me to just be the Michigan guy that I'm trademarked as.
Yeah.
And that was really nice because when they reach out and they don't have a lot of restrictions, I think it makes the process very fun. The two videos went great. They were super colorful. It was everything that I dreamed of for myself in creating content and
Yeah.
making a brand deal happen.
I love that.
What about for you?
So, I mean, I already talked about Metricool a little bit, so I already shared their name. Love them, worked with them for a long time, and their audience is just really aligned. So I think it's
Hmm.
just a very fruitful partnership on both ends. But one that was really interesting and fun for me, it was actually a domain name website.
Oh, interesting.
They wanted to really tap into the content creator market. And so they hosted a content creator panel in LA
Ooh.
and basically invited content creators kind of basically do what we're doing, talk
Yeah.
about how they built their brands and all of that kind of stuff. And they reached out to me to moderate the panel, which was really fun. And I think more brands need to do things like that. So they flew me out to LA, got to stay, there for a week. It was
Hmm.
super, super fun event. And then there was also some content, post content activations afterwards and or post event content.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think more brands really need to think about that, is not just keeping things as like, do a post for us, like how can we really bring it full circle and get you in a room,
Yeah.
get you like creating content on site and doing things like, because it was one of those events that I like was talking about for free. And I still do now. And I'm
Hmm.
still always going to have this kind of fondness for them because in person just has such a different impact
Yeah.
on you.
You truly experienced it.
Hmm.
You felt it all. It was great.
Yeah,
So I get
felt it all.
that.
Okay, this one is very okay. Let's go with this one actually. Do you have any horror stories?
Ooh.
Any like nightmares, and what did you learn from it?
To be honest, I feel like in having constant conversations with you, it's always good because I think I have a really good filter for good or bad brand deal experiences. Like I think even from the first email, I can pretty much tell how the brand's going to be throughout the whole thing.
Yeah.
And I've said no to very significant amount of money because it maybe wasn't aligned with my values. I didn't think it'd be good for my brand. The people messaging me, the way they communicated, I didn't like. And even in our initial back and forth with email, maybe I didn't like as much either. And so I'm usually able to say no in the beginning stages to where I really don't feel like I've actually had a horrific brand deal experience with any of the agencies, client direct people I've worked with. They've all been really amazing, and to the point where one of them was even like, "You're our favorite, influencer," or things like
Yeah.
that. And so I feel like that helps empower me to keep deciding on those types of people versus take a risk, if I
Mm,
feel like I'm taking a risk by saying yes to something in my gut, I really don't like.
yeah, love that. I've had a few that really, kept me up at night, let's just
Hmm.
say.
It can be
And
it can be horrific
yeah.
having these contract obligations.
Yeah, and mine typically always come back to a similar thing, which is lack of creative control, I would say. It was funny because when I was editing the first episode of the podcast, I threw in a little bit of archival footage from, the depths of my YouTube studio. And I ran across this one of my first brand deals that I did. It's now privated, but it was for a hair extension company.
Oh,
And back when I was doing beauty content.
yeah.
And I remember it was the first one that really just like hit me like in the pit of my stomach and made me feel so terrible about myself because they were like they gave me very little direction, and they didn't give me a creative brief. They were kind of just
Hmm.
like, hey, make a video teaching people how to use these, which, spoiler alert, I don't wear hair extensions, so already I probably should have known like this isn't the most aligned brand, but whatever, you live and you learn. So
Yeah.
that's lesson number one. Lesson number two, or rant number two, I guess, is their feedback was, hey, we really like this influencer's content. After I sent them the draft, they're really upset that my content didn't look like her content. Well, keep in mind this influencer had like 2 million followers.
Hmm.
She was just a completely different look at everything than me. And so, I've learned to really get the details at the beginning and have an aligned brand, also have a brand who knows you and your content, because if they watched any of my videos, they would know like I'm not going to make the same videos
Yeah.
as this person. And also, the brand shouldn't want you to necessarily. Of course, it's great to have examples of, hey, this performed really well, or we loved this one, but they
Right.
shouldn't be saying, Ryan, look at Latasha's channel and emulate that, you
That
know?
is good. That is weird. It's a little bit like, hey, like reminds me of the scene in Matilda where they force her to watch the TV. They're like, calm down, okay? Like, do
Hmm.
not like, you reached out to me for me. Let me
Yes.
do me.
Yep.
I think what you said though was really important of getting a lot of the details up front
Hmm.
because I feel like that is how I was able to decipher.
Mm.
Because if I was asking for things that I know I need and
Hmm.
they were kind of being wishy-washy on it, I know that they probably aren't the brand I want to work with. Because if
Yep.
you don't know these details that I think are really important to me, to important to any content creator, then you must not be thinking about, you must not be caring about me as much as I need you to in order for this to work.
Yeah, for
And I
sure.
think caring about a creator does involve, allowing
Hmm.
things like creative control to happen.
All right. I want to get really nosy. I
I'm
think I know your
scared.
answer. You probably know mine too, but um, what's the most that you've ever been paid for a brand collab?
So I
If you
was
care to
thinking of,
share.
I feel like, are you going to share an exact number?
Hmm, well, I'll give my answer. So I guess, is the answer for a deal or for a video?
I would say a deal as a whole, like the
Okay.
package.
So I would say for an entire pack, it's weird to talk about money, but I want to also, I'm sorry, I'm talking so much. This is a podcast, though. That's the point, right? Everyone's a comment. Latasha, just shut up. Okay, I just want to say the reason I think this is an important question to ask and to share is to our point about how to price. I think it hurts us all when we undercharge.
Yeah,
I think it is very empowering to know what is possible,
yeah.
and so you know, whatever. There's that. But I would say for a deal, it was around 65K for a
See,
deal.
that's
Now this was complex. Okay, there
It
was a
could
lot of
long
content in there.
time, incorporate a lot of things.
Yes. And I worked for that 65K just like it was my job. But yeah, it is possible to do that for sure. And that was, I had 100,000 something subscribers
Yeah.
on YouTube. Like I wasn't huge. I was getting around the same views as I get now. So
Yeah. I would say that for mine, to give people a context of how to price, again, like things I want to say that contribute to my own confidence of how to price. One, I've been in digital marketing, very top level with huge companies to very small level for 10 years. That's a lot of experience. That's a lot of like knowing what a company might want and to be able to help them.
yeah.
Two, it's been 4 years. Like I said, I
Mhm.
put my face out there. I've kept my niche. That's a huge thing in itself of like, I mean, you've seen I get recognized in public, so that ups everything too. And then just general followership, general, like I said, things like what what they're looking for and how much reach I think I could probably get on such a video.
Yeah.
And I would say my range is like the couple thousand to a couple of tens of thousand based
Yep.
on what they want. And the upper side of things, think about multi video, think about paid usage rights that are very long, more exclusivity. Like I'm sure your
Yes.
thing that took a longer time involves some exclusivity with that. So know that
Exclusivity, unpaid usage, right? Yeah, for sure. This
these
wasn't just me
things,
doing a YouTube video
yeah,
and being like, bye, sponsored.
right. I would say to give someone like hard advice, if you start to see those things like higher time of exclusivity or paid usage, just start doubling things
Mm,
because that's really what I think in my heart of hearts made me feel better about. You're not okay. These are great brands. I've never had a bad brand I've worked with, but you are selling your soul a little bit for their product or service.
yeah.
And I say that in a not negative way, but you have to think about it from you are the brand
Yeah.
and you're being thrown into the business world of things. You need to figure out a way to, make you feel better about it. And to me, money does that. So,
T. I love it. I love the tip of just start doubling for those things because
yeah.
even still, I'm like, I don't know how many extra hundreds, thousands should this be? I don't know.
Right. And then emailing them, you're kind of like, how do I explain why I want to charge this amount versus that? You could just say, the base for that is this. And
Yep.
then, hey, you're also asking for paid. I double it.
Yep.
That sounds very casual and very, I think, realistic for another brand to hear too.
Mm.
Like a
Hmm.
person in the business world would be like, okay, that makes sense.
Yep.
At
I
least
love
I
it.
would if I was reaching out. And I mean, I've worked with, that's how Latasha and I met. I
Yep.
was looking at influencer deck.
Yep.
So
And I
I
did get
think that
hired for
that's
that
a,
campaign, by the way.
huh?
I said, and I did get hired for that campaign, by the
See,
way.
there you go. And I was like, she looks like the it girl here. So
How the times have changed. Now you're the it girl of
I
Metro Detroit.
I feel like we talked about so many, especially like hard hitting things that people can do for brand deals. So that made me very excited. Just the
Yeah.
fact that we've hit so many little points. And for anyone who didn't hear a question that they wanted to hear, comment it, shoot us a message, send us, follow us on Instagram and send us a message there about this even. We're open to discussing a lot because there's a lot out there to make sure everyone's on. I think the goal of this podcast is making sure everyone's on the same page a little
Yes,
bit,
for
from a
sure.
content creator point of view.
Yeah, and just feels educated and empowered, honestly. Like I
That
said, I
is
think it's
huge.
great to let people
Educated,
know
empowered.
what the possibilities are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And be sure to subscribe to the podcast too if you like this episode and want to hear more from us on a weekly basis, but all things content creator, spilling the tea on our experiences. And yeah, do you have anything else to share?
That's all.
Sounds
I've
good.
been doing hand gestures the whole
Do,
time.
do, do,
Do
do.
all the things. Thank you all so much for listening. Thank you, Ryan,
Yes,
for
thank you.
being
And
here.
we'll talk to y'all soon.
Bye.
Bye.